Okay, colleagues, good morning. I think we can start for now.
Good morning, Kulthum. Yes, we're ready from our side.
Okay, great. Just a moment. So I need to share my screen. All right, could you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it, Kulthum.
Okay, thank you very much. So good morning, everyone. Dear colleagues, it's really a great pleasure to have you today with us. So this webinar is being organized in cooperation with the Anglophone Africa Network and MENA Network. So today's webinar is on inspiring Lebanon's on CBIT II journey. So we will have an experience sharing on the implementation of CBIT Phase II projects from Uganda. So thank you very much for accepting to share your experience, as you are the first country in Africa already implementing its projects. The second phase, I mean, of CBIT. And also congratulations to Lebanon on like already, I think they are finalizing the last steps of their first CBITs. So you are the first country in MENA as well. So for now, as you see here, the agenda is presenting 3 sessions. The first session will be on key steps and process of requesting for CBIT II funding. It will be presented by our colleague, Billy. Thank you very much for joining and for finding some slot time for us. So thank you very much. And the second phase will be on an overview of Lebanon's CBIT I projects. We will see together lessons learned, challenges, and opportunities. I think it will be presented by our colleague Leeke, the projects manager, and also a final session will be an experience sharing on developing Uganda's CBIT II projects presented by Uganda's team. Thank you very much also for being with us today. And of course, we will conclude with a mentee survey feedback and the wrap-up and closing remarks. So now, please let me give the floor to my colleague Freya. Freya, she's an advisor on climate transparency in UNFCCC and supports in MENA and other networks for the CBIT GSP. Freya, go ahead, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Kulthum, and good afternoon or good morning to everyone, depending on where you're joining us today. So as Kulthum said, my name is Freya Milford, and I'm a project officer in climate transparency at the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Centre, working within the CBIT GSP project. And I want to welcome you all today for joining this webinar. Obviously, as we know, that as we're kind of continuing in our kind of collective efforts to strengthen climate transparency under the Paris Agreement, the capacity building initiative for transparency, the CBIT project, really serves as a vital mechanism in supporting developing countries to enhance in their technical and institutional capacities to ensure alignment with the ETF and the Paris Agreement. So today, as Kulthum mentioned, Uganda has really been a pioneer in the African and MENA region, and has successfully embarked on the second phase of its CBIT national project. And this webinar kind of developed out of the response from a request for support from Lebanon in initiating their own CBIT II national project. So in this experience sharing webinar today, what we really want to do is have that self-by-self collaboration in learning from the really valuable lessons that Uganda has had in their first CBIT project and as they move into the initiating the first steps of the CBIT 2, while also kind of looking at the work that Lebanon has been doing successfully in their first CBIT project as well. So this webinar isn't just about learning from Uganda's journey, but also kind of strengthening that regional and global collaboration. And we'll also obviously be hearing from our representative, our colleague, William Billy from Jeff, in understanding kind of the different mechanisms that, financial mechanisms that Jeff have in place that can help support countries as they kind of move throughout the CBIT project. So I really want to extend my sincere thanks to you all for joining today, both my colleagues from CBIT GSB and UNFCCC, and also from Jeff. And I really want to thank as well our speakers from Uganda and from Lebanon today. So I really hope that today's session will be active and for you all to participate, asking questions and kind of taking full advantage of this opportunity and experience sharing to learn and further collaborate. And I thank you all, and I think I'll hand over back to you, Keltoum.
Yes, thank you very much, Freya. So for now, and without losing time, so I'm gonna ask you if you would be able to open your camera. We need to take a beautiful picture of this event together. All right, it's nice to see you all. Just one more, and we'll be ready. Okay. So today, as you can see, we don't have much people because people who are invited are actually only countries who are already involved in implementing their first CBITs in both regions, in MENA and Anglophone Africa networks. So thank you very much, colleagues. And now let me give the floor to our colleague, William Bailey. Thank you very much for joining and accepting being with us today. So the floor is yours, William.
Thank you, Kaltum, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. My name is William Holness. Billy, I'm currently working at the Jeff, supporting global efforts on climate transparency, particularly on the CBIT. And in this regard, well, I will have the pleasure to share with you some of the insights that we have from the Jeff Secretariat as it relates to the future of the CBIT, particularly considering that these two countries have moved towards a second stage. Uganda, we personally reviewed the project proposal, and we were happy to say that it was approved, and it could serve as an example for Lebanon and other countries, not only in these two CBIT networks, regional networks in this case, but also at a global level as we see this becoming a trend. So if I may, I will start sharing my screen with you all. I would appreciate if you tell me when you're able to see it.
Yeah, now we can see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you seeing it in full screen?
Yeah, in full screen, yeah.
In full screen, yeah.
Great, perfect. So I will start by saying that at the Jeff, we have a commitment for supporting the Enhanced Transparency Framework, the ETF, and we do this within three thematic areas, if you will. The first of them would be reporting. As you know, countries, with exception of SIDS and LDCs, have the obligation to submit biennial transparency reports every 2 years, and we had the first deadline in December 2024. The JEF is the avenue that countries use to obtain resources for such reporting, and also we keep providing support for national communications under our enabling activities budget from the climate change star allocation on focal areas. We also have the second pillar that's based on capacity building. And this is, well, as we know very well, the capacity building initiative for transparency, the CBIT at the national level, both for countries that have that it will be their first time applying for a CBIT, and those who are, we call it graduated from first CBIT project, or they have finalized it and moving on their second towards their second CBIT project. And the third pillar will be the global support, the CBIT global support program particularly, and there's also thematic support. I will go more into details about each of these three pillars as I move forward with the presentation, but with this three, the main message is that it provides an integrated support for countries for Article 13 of the Paris Agreement, which is something very specific, laser focused on the Paris Agreement. Going into a little bit more detail for the first pillar, is the reporting support modalities to prepare biennial transparency reports and national communications. As you know, countries can access support for 2 BTRs at the same time, up to one combined with a national communication as applicable, and as part of the same project activity, meaning that there is no need to submit two separate project proposals for that to PIFs or CEO approval documents. And we have the information now that confirms that the detailed information about the support modalities. But we can have a standalone BTR for up to $600,000. The country must not have ongoing BUR support, as we're facing BUR, as you know, but an ongoing national communication project is acceptable in this case. The second option would be combined BTR and national communication support up to $633,000. And the country must not have, in this case, either a national communication or BUR support. And then additional financing or top up, which is also that is becoming more common these days, is to apply for countries that have an actual BUR or national communication to top it up, up to $250,000 for their first BTR to submit it. This is just a general idea of how the JEF is supporting BTRs, and as you know, we have passed the deadline for submission, the official deadline for submission for BTRs in December last year. Nevertheless, time goes by really quickly, and we are already approaching. And we know these processes sometimes take a good amount of resources and time invested, and we already see projects countries are working on their BTRs, or they have actually asked even for funding for the third BTR. So it's moving fast, and I will go into more detail after I'm covered. This is just to provide you a panorama of the BTR coverage and countries that are working on either the first, second, and third BTR, or first and second BTR, or only their first BTR, and a little bit of the numbers that we have on support provided to countries at a global level, and the different modalities that have been used for based on the ones that I mentioned on the previous slide, and including countries that have let's say complemented the support with their star location. And we have four JEF agencies working on BTR support for countries, which are UNEP, UNDP, FAO, and UNIDO. In this case, it's open for all 18 JEF accredited implemented agencies, but in this case, there are four that are currently active supporting countries in this regard. Moving to the second pillar, we can talk about now capacity building. As you know, the capacity building initiative for transparency. It's meant to build institutional and technical capacities to meet the provision established on Article 13 of the Paris Agreement. As of October of last year, which was the last official cut that we did for our COP reporting purposes, we had 100 projects covering 90 countries, adding up to $168 million in grants for countries. And as you know, countries that have completed their first stage can actually access now the second CBIT support for their second CBIT project. And here we have a graph illustrating figuring how the funding is divided between projects and fundings in different regions. Here we have, I would say, based on the MENA and Anglophone Africa regions, is particularly the Africa and Asia regions are more of interest, and so you can have an idea of where it's taking us. Examples of eligible activities under the CBIT, and as you know, the CBIT has been administered by the GEF since the Paris Agreement. We had a commitment, we had a mandate, and that's why we're implementing it. It's directly related to the Paris Agreement. And when the CBIT was created, was developed, there were three main objectives or thematic areas of support for addressing this initiative. The first one was to strengthen national institutions for transparency-related activities in line with national priorities. There was a need, or there's still a need, to build institutional capacities over time and in a sustained manner, so that countries are more independent when it comes to the reporting, having the reporting capacities and having the robustness and technical quality and rigorosity required for the purposes of meeting the provisions of the ETF. We saw that it was common for developing countries that were just rely on external consultants or international support for the development of the CBIT, of the reporting, and then there were no capacities installed in the country, and that ultimately lead for the countries to not being able to have or to enhance their own information systems, and to always have to rely on external support. So this is one of the pillars, is to support actually the institutional capacities for such endeavors. The second technical area that the CBIT supports is provide relevant tools, training, and assistance for meeting such provisions. And in here, I would say is the technical scope is the capacity building that we have seen not only in Uganda and in Lebanon, but in countries around the world, is enhancement and the popular activities I would call the enhancement of greenhouse gas inventories from the perspectives of enhancement or developing emission factors, particularly for key prioritized sectors within the countries, as well as enhancement activity data collection for the purposes of greenhouse gas inventory development, as well as the development and enhancement of MRV systems for mitigation and support needed and received as developing country parties, in addition to, of course, indicators, vulnerability and risk indicators for monitoring and evaluation systems for adaptation. And again, also supporting the NDC tracking systems that are also part of what's reported on BTRs and national communications. To assist in the improvement as well of transparency over time, this means that these tracking tools for transparency-related actions are targeting progress toward targets and goals at a more long-term level. It would inform climate policy and national planning based on the information or the information the data that has been processed in this reporting. And we also facilitate this by designing and drafting institutional arrangements for so that institutions or relevant stakeholders within national governments and even subnational governments and non-state actors could speak to each other, and having the channels for them to do so, as normally the ministries of environment won't have all the information they need for these reports. So this is also part of what the CBIT is supporting. It's not a strict list. There are definitely some other activities that could be considered. We're just presenting here the ones that have been becoming more popular. The only factor that we use to determine if an activity is eligible for CBIT funding is that we do need for it to be aligned with Article 13 of the Paris Agreement. We have seen more often that countries are requiring support for topics such as development or enhancement of their system for Article 6, for instance, or for updating their NDCs under Article 4, or accessing, I would say, support also for Article 7 on loss and damage. But these activities, as long as they can relate or we can make it related to the tracking systems of the Article 13, they can be eligible for CBIT funding. Otherwise, if there's not a direct correlation or direct impact on the reporting system on the Article 13, then it will not be eligible under CBIT, and the country will have to create a separate, standalone project under the climate change focal area, in this case under the JEF. And this is also very important to mention the steps for embarking on CBIT2 formulation and implementation. I would say it's a very streamlined process in this case. But the first thing that we need to have in order to be able to formally review and approve a project or endorse the CBIT2 project is for the CBIT1 project to reflect the status as project implemented in the JEF portal. And in order for that to happen, we need that the JEF implementing agency must have submitted the terminal evaluation in the JEF portal. If the terminal evaluation is not submitted, even though the project could have been financially and technically closed, but if the terminal evaluation is not formally submitted in the project, we cannot process CBIT to request. We could start probably doing some initial extraordinary reviews while the terminal evaluation is being posted on the JEF portal, but if that step is not completed, we cannot move forward. So we encourage projects that are in the process of submitting a CBIT2 proposal or thinking about it and are in the process of closing their first CBIT project to please submit the terminal evaluation so that we are able to process the request in a more timely manner. Also, when we are reviewing CBIT2 project proposals, we take a careful review of the terminal evaluation, and the project implementation reports are also posted in the JEF portal. And we take note of particularly of the sections of main findings and lessons learned of the and we see how that could be implemented in the JEF in the CBIT2 project, both from the technical and administrative standpoint. We would like to see how these lessons learned are informing and are taken as notes for improvement for the second CBIT project. And then we also assess the CBIT2 project document in a technical way based on the CBIT1 project, of course, but also the BTR and national communication projects, particularly if there are other, I would say, technology needs assessment projects submitted to GEF by countries. We will also take note of that. And other non-GEF funded complementary activities are very common these days, those coming from instance ICAT or PATPA or the NDC partnership, among others. Just to reconfirm or to stress out that we would like for the project to be complementary and not duplication of efforts. And then that's something that we also take into account. Normally, we have a table at the project document stage that we review carefully and seeing how this ongoing or previous initiatives implemented by the country are being incorporated, or their lessons are being shared for the development and then implementation of the CBIT 2 project in the country. The CBIT is also expected to provide continuous support to countries, meaning and in this case, like countries are finishing up their first CBIT project, moving on their second CBIT project. And this is something that we don't foresee for it to stop happening. If in the future, when countries are finishing up their second CBIT project, there might be still room for countries to keep improving their transparency systems. Of course, we know it's not a one-time or two-time shot. So this is just to consider that we know that funding is limited. We are within a certain capacity on budget and time frame, but just bearing in mind that it will be good and also a suggestion to prioritize those activities that should be addressed more promptly, and then leaving others for a potential next stage, so that we can assure that support is provided to the largest amount of developing countries as it is our mandate. So in terms of the CBIT, we have a growing balanced portfolio. These are the countries that have requested CBIT support. As I told you already, there has been since October last year 100 projects in 90 countries been supported by the CBIT, including 29 LDCs and 17 sets. And the CBIT funding is totaling $168 million. We have 92 national projects and 1 regional projects in this case. We have a growing and balanced portfolio, as we currently have 86% of the portfolio under implementation or has already completed implementation, which is a very good number. It's a mature portfolio. It's not on its early stages anymore. Out of which 19 countries, including in this case Uganda, have finalized their first CBIT the project, have submitted a terminal evaluation, and 8 countries have requested support for their CBIT 2 already and are currently being either approved or are under review. In this case, for the CBIT project, 7 out of the 18 GEF agencies are providing support for the CBIT projects, including UNEP, UNDP, FAO, Conservation International, the Inter-American Development Bank, FECO, and WWF US. And again, these are the 7 active agencies working on it, but it's up to the countries to choose if it's going to work with any of these 7 or select from the 18 agencies working on it with us at the GEF. So we also like to address the complementarity between CBIT and enabling activities projects. As we know, we're on the second half of the GEF 8 cycle. This was the GEF 8 replenishment and resources for both CBIT and enabling activities. That means the reporting, national communications, and biennial transparency reports are being committed quickly by eligible developing countries. Developing countries are then encouraged to submit their proposal through GEF agencies in a timely manner, so that we can assure that these GEF resources are allocated efficiently and on time for countries. And this is something that is particularly relevant for countries that are yet to request support for their second BTRs that are due in 2026. But as you know, these processes take some time first to access the funding and then to implement the project itself. And we would like to encourage countries and support them in being able to timely deliver their BTRs by the agreed deadlines. And last but not least, the third pillar of our support towards the ETF is the CBIT Global Support Program, the global support, and also the thematic support. And this can be divided actually in two. The first one is, well, I think you are all very familiar with, is the CBIT Global Support Program that's bringing us together today, that is currently being implemented by UNEP with support from UNDP's Climate Promise, and for which we have 10 linguistic and regional networks at a global level, and we have 2 actively present networks here, as you know. And the second area that this global thematic support is encompassed by is the thematic global support, and it's currently being provided by the Food and Agriculture Organization (FAO) to assist countries in preparing their agriculture, forestry, and other land use (AFOLU) sector to the ETF requirements. For this, we have 2 global projects that are currently actually on their second stages. One of them is the CBIT Forest 2 and the CBIT AFOLU Plus. So these are, I would say, their second version, and it's also possible for countries to access this funding accordingly and provide global support and facilitate South-South cooperations and exchange of lessons learned. And with that, I will be done. I will be happy to take any questions that there might be from the audience at this point. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, William. William, for that.
Go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, thank you, Kelton. Thank you so much, William, for that detailed presentation. I will now allow anyone in the room who has a question, please. The time is now. Yes, I can see Leia's hand. Kindly go ahead.
Yes, thank you, William. That was very comprehensive and straight to the point. So just a couple of questions from our side. So you said that we have to link this in the proposal. Should the challenges and lessons learned be explicitly linked to activities, or can it be done in general under situation analysis, that these are the lessons learned and these are the activities? Just to know, how to write and link activities. This is the first question. The second, you were saying in your last slide that JEF 8, that the money under JEF 8 is being used very quickly. So given that the terminal evaluation for CBIT 1 for Lebanon will only be done by maybe Q3 of 2025, can we today express our interest as Lebanon to access CBIT 2 funding and then present the proposal once we have the results of the terminal evaluation, or even our expression of interest should wait until the terminal evaluation is done?
Thank you, Leah, for your question. To address the first one, we would like to see the lessons learned incorporated, probably not in, if at all possible, have a direct correlation between them and the activities provided, and probably not all of them will need to be addressed depending on the scope of the project. But we would like to see a more streamlined connection between the lessons learned from the first CBIT project to the second one, or make reference in the most narrative appropriate way, so we can see that that linkage. That's key, and that provides a robust case for the need of the CBIT to project, particularly because we know that once we work on a particular topic, we then discover that the next step, or we discover how big the gap could be, and then we ask for accessing more funding to keep working on the progress made. That for the first question. And for the second one, the CBIT funding works on a first come first served basis. So there is that's an amount of money that's currently available at the GEF and has been earmarked for CBIT. Nevertheless, as you correctly mentioned, we need to have the CBIT one terminal evaluation posted on the portal so that we can approve a project or formally. We can start by reviewing the first CBIT project for the country, but the funding won't necessarily be secured until its approval, and we cannot approve it without the terminal evaluation. So our suggestion will be to move up to work on both fronts, the terminal evaluation and the CBIT project development, and we can provide I would say reviews from a perspective, from an I would say a technical perspective, and then budgetive and administrative the areas, but we will not be able to approve or secure the funding until the terminal evaluation is submitted and posted on the GEF portal.
Yeah, thank you. I hope, Leah, your questions have been answered. If you still have need any clarifications, kindly maybe write in the chat, but you are also free to unmute yourself and let us know. We shall allow you to ask. I can see a hand from Cherif Ken. Kindly unmute yourself and ask.
Yes, thank you, Sheila, and thank you also, William, for the presentation. In Mauritania, we started to implement our CBIT one a bit late, a few months ago. So I do hope and expect that by the time we finalize to implement it, there will still be fund to submit for CBI2. Thank you.
Sure, Sheriff, and it's great to have colleagues from countries also participating in that South cooperation other than Uganda and Lebanon at this point. So it's good to spread the world and share these valuable lessons. In this case, as we were mentioning, the idea for the CBIT is to provide the support on a continuous basis. We're currently on GEF 8 replenishment. We started CBIT funding in GEF 6 replenishment. So we have seen it actually grow. The trend has been for the funding for CBIT to grow from GEF 6 to GEF 7, from GEF 7 to GEF 8. We're currently at the GEF, we're under the discussions of GEF 9 replenishment, which will start in the second half of 2026. And considering that the project for Mauritania, as you mentioned, started very recently, probably the funding for a potential CBIT 2 project for Mauritania will happen on GEF 9. For that, we will have to see how these negotiations work at our council level within the GEF Secretariat, and then they will know the exact numbers that we will land on, and if there are changes in the modalities for accessing it, but it will be probably something to be discussed under GEF 9.
Thank you so much for that. I would like to, at this moment, to recognize the different countries that have participated. I can see participants from Mauritania, from Lebanon, from Uganda, but also agencies like Conservation International, GEF agency, but also UNDP. Thank you so much for participating. And I think when we have more more of these lessons learned and sharing, we shall invite more countries. But we are grateful that you were able to join. So at this moment, if we do not have any other questions for William, points of clarifications, I will request Lebanon to make their presentation on what they have learned so far as they are implementing their CBIT 1. And then also maybe there's something that we could learn from them, but most importantly, to pick some of those elements that can be taken for designing a project for CBIT 2. So the floor is yours, Lebanon. Thank you.
Thank you. I will share my screen. Can you see?
Yes, we can see, but it's not in the presentation mode.
Okay.
Now it is in the presentation mode.
Okay, great. So I'll go quickly through through where we are today in terms of our reporting on the Paris Agreement, what we have achieved under CBIT 1, what were the challenges, at least from our reading of the gaps and challenges, and what are we planning to do for CBIT 2, just to get also like your feedback and be inspired from Uganda. And I take this opportunity to thank Uganda for giving the time, sharing their experience and inspiring. So first, okay, so Lebanon has not missed one reporting cycle since 1999, I think, from the initial national communication. So we have presented all our national communications. The last one was the fourth national communication in 2021. 4 BURs and 1 BTR that we submitted in December 2024 with an NIR, and with the CTF and CRT tables. And we are on time, I think, to present BTR 2 and 5 and C. We did benefit throughout this whole period from JAF funding, from the enabling activities, and BTR 1, 2, and 5 and C are also being prepared under this modality. So the CBIT 1 started in 2022, and it was supposed to end in April 2025, but we requested for an extension because one of the activities, that is the online platform, is still facing a lot of problems to be put online, and I'll go through it specifically later. So we requested some extension to December 2025. This is why I was saying the terminal evaluation will only happen in, I think, June, July, August 2025, so that we close the project and by the end of the year. So we had two project components. One was about the transparency baseline. So the national institution to establish transparency baseline, the status of the policies, and establish this coordination mechanism, which was called MRV coordination mechanism. Now it's called the transparency coordination mechanism. So this was established throughout these last 2 years. Basically, what we've done, we have established sectoral task forces that include the experts, academicians, implementing partners, so, you know, with the big international organizations working in Lebanon, in addition to government employees, to lead on a specific sector in terms of what are the NDC indicators, how to track them, and what are the GHG inventory activity data that we need. So basically, the task, so if you want, the terms of reference of these task forces are to collect the information and share them. How this information will be shared? Through a database, which is called MISCAL, Management Information System for Climate Action in Lebanon, which we have developed. So all these task forces have a task force coordinator that who is supposed to coordinate the task force and share all this information in MISCAL. these information, analyze them. So we are responsible of coordinating all these activities. We compile a report, put them back in MISCAL, and then share them at the end with the NGC committee, which is like the official committee that is supposed to track the progress of NGCs, but also update the NGC for their endorsement, validation, and policy guidance. So all this framework has been developed under CBIT. The terms of reference of each of the task forces, the indicators, the validation of the indicator, the development of the MISCAL, also the training of all these task forces, plus the update of the NGC committee, because a lot of people left the government. So we are also coordinating with the NGC committee and with other ministries to have an update list of focal. And then, so the NGC committee will report on NGC progress and update the NGC as per the decision. So these are a little bit the overall responsibilities of the task forces. And we've added a very nice layer of peer validation. So the validation would be done through meetings where data is presented and it's peer validated. We have also assigned the roles when data providers, when task force members or coordinators. So what is their role throughout the data collection, the data validation, the GHG inventory compilation, but also the NGC progress tracking. So this was, if you want, the institutional arrangements, and a report on transparency baseline and transparency strategy was prepared, and it's currently being fine-tuned to be published online and be translated in Arabic. The second component was more on improving technical parameters in terms of improving our reporting and establishing the MISCAL database. So we did develop 166 indicators, as you can see here, under the CBIT. So based on the NGC targets, we divided them in headline indicators and supporting indicators to also facilitate the process. They have all been validated by the stakeholders, and we have assigned each stakeholders to which indicator they should report. This is the MISCAL platform I was telling you about. So it's like a dynamic. It's not publicly available, so you need to have your username and password to access it and to put information inside it. And it does not calculate the GHG inventory. The GHG inventory is calculated outside the platform using the IPCC software, but it's used to collect the activity data. And then the platform calculates the progress in a dashboard, the progress towards meeting NGC targets. And it's done in a way that we report X-2 as per the MPGs. So in 2026, we will be reporting collecting 2024 data. We also did a series of trainings for all these task forces. Not just to build their capacities on NGC, on indicators, on inventory, but also on their specific sectors. What does it mean for an agricultural expert to track NGC indicators? What is their role and how they can participate in this? So we trained around 87 people, and among which 50% were women. We also under component 2, we also did we run some research to develop the tier 2 emission factor for energy, which is our primary source update of emissions. We updated the transport. Also, we did a study on the new parameters for transport in Lebanon so that we can improve our transport emissions. We upgraded 7 data sets, activity data sets, including waste, including LULUCF. So all of this were specific studies, research and studies to improve some of the sectors or activity data that through the BURs, the previous BURs, were reported as gaps or were included in our improvement plan. So the way we do it, we take our improvement plan, choose 3 or 4 main tasks or activities, and we tackle them in CBIT 1. And the objective is in CBIT 2 to do the same. What are our improvement plan out of the BTR? Actually, we cannot do it as a whole. We will have to prioritize and choose 2 or 3 activities. And this is how we've been doing it from the year 2000. Every cycle, we choose 2 or 3 priority sectors or subsectors to improve. And this is why if you read our NIR, you see that there's a big improvement from the second national communication in 2000 to the first BTR in 2024. So what were the main challenges in CBIT 1? The hosting of the web platform was a nightmare. Why? Because during the last 2 or 3 years, we had a very big economic crisis and a quasi collapse of government institutions, including the servers and the virtual world where the ministries host their data. And we are still a bit prehistoric in terms of we still host the data in physical servers and not on cloud because of privacy and security concerns. So this was a main challenge. Until today, we're trying to find a way to host the web platform somewhere that can be virtual without having problems with the government, but also that can have a backup in a physical server at the ministry. Also, some of the challenges were the availability and accessibility of data. So out of the 166 indicator, maybe 40 can be met today and reported today, and you have 126 indicators that will have to be developed and that we will have to guide research to develop them. Establishing institutional arrangements, it's not really the establishing of these arrangements to sustain the process. Finally, a very high turnover rate of government staff. So the people that we train, most of them leave government institutions and go to the private sector because they're looking for good opportunities. So we are repeating capacity building sessions over and over again, and we're training generations of government staff, which is not very sustainable in terms of long-term planning. And the instability of the country definitely is playing a role in the institutionalization of all this. So, and in ownership of the process. And one good thing, just to let you know that there's a community of practice that we have been able to build throughout the years, not just from government employees, but from academic institutions and implementing entities that that kept the momentum. And if you want, they are the institutional memory of the whole process. And we're trying as much as possible to build on a larger group of stakeholders that are the task forces instead of just focusing on government focal points that are changing all the time. Lessons learned from CBIT 1 also, when we were trying to develop indicators, we just realized how bad our targets were, our adaptation targets were. So this is definitely something that we will try to amend in CBIT 2 to have more specific targets so that it would be easier to track. Ideas for CBIT 2. So based on CBIT 1, we did our internal evaluation, and I have been inspired by the proposal of Uganda, Nicaragua. I think who else was? I think there was a third country who already developed CBIT 2. So our ideas for CBIT 2 are divided into 4 components, as I understood CBIT 2 wants to see. The first is under strengthening institutional capacity. So based on CBIT 1, we are trying to generate missing indicators. So, if from the 166 we have 40, why not have 60 in the next cycle? So maybe have specific research to fill and complete some of the missing indicators. Improve MISCAL. Again, we still did not try it live with the users, So maybe based on our first trial during this year, we will find some gaps and some improvements to be made. So to capture this CBIT 2 and institutional putting under a climate change law. So under NDC 3.0, we're trying to do a climate change law. So maybe also develop here very specific legislations to institutionalize the NDC tracking and the reporting system of MISCAL under this climate change law, triangulating all the projects that we are leading on at the Ministry of Environment. Another component which is more strengthening technical capacity, so not just institutional arrangements, but technical capacity of state and non-state actors. So here again, continue technical capacities and capacity building fora for national stakeholders on NDC emission factors, priority sectors. We're really interested in doing more detailed assessment. I know that the BTR will be reviewed, but we really want to have more detailed assessment, review and assessment of the last emission inventory that we submitted in BTR1 or that we will be submitting in BTR2 and the NDC tracking chapter to have specific and to improve our improvement plan. Also to improve our reporting on support received and needed. Updated and improved information on the impacts of climate change with maybe a focus on loss and damage. And we are also interested, so under the UNEP project, we are developing an adaptation course for an executive level adaptation course with the university in Lebanon. So we were also thinking, why not use CBIT 2 funding to enroll maybe 1 or 2 batches of government employees to take the course and graduate from an adaptation course, a climate adaptation course at the university. So again, we're trying as much as possible, if you can notice, to link all the outcomes of the project with each other. NDC 3.0, CBIT 1, BTR, and NAP, because we are the same team working on all of this. And finally, the component 3 and 4 would be more geared toward learning and knowledge sharing, monitoring and evaluation, the way Jeff likes it. And if Jeff likes it, it should be there. So this is basically an overview of where we've been and where we think we want to go. And I'm really looking forward to have your feedback, your insights, your guidance on this. That would be super helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah. I can see Musa's hand up, but in the chat, maybe this is building on from the previous presentation. But I can see Eva has tried to answer. Zidi, if you are not really satisfied, I would also ask Eva to unmute herself at a later stage, maybe to answer you. But maybe let's first hear from Musa on what he's saying.
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. Happy to see you. Hi, colleagues. Yeah, it's just for Leah from Lebanon and also colleagues. So just to share with you this information from UNDP CBIT GSP that is offering the countries the possibility to have a digital platform for MRV ETF. This platform is open source and offers the country the possibility of collecting, archiving, and reporting on elements such as the MRV system, the climate transparency, and the carbon register. So it is a model that we can duplicate for other countries that are interested. So for the hosting in Senegal, Kenya, Ethiopia, Seychelles, we have already installed this system, and it is hosted on the government server to ensure the sustainability, the protection of the national data, and lastly, to avoid the additional hosting costs. This is the possibility you can use to discuss with countries to host the platform on the government server. We have a kind of support if your countries or Anglophone or MENA countries are interested. We can try to have a discussion on that. And we present the platform for the ETF, climate transparency, and carbon register. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Musa, for that information. But I can see a hand from Sharif. Kindly unmute yourself and speak.
Yes, thank you to both of you. Leah, you mentioned the NDC committee. And yesterday I was discussing with the Director of Climate Change and the Green Economy to have one here in Mauritania. I really want to learn more about yours. I mean, the composition, the challenges, and lesson learned. Maybe this could help us. Thank you.
Yes, Leah, would you want to give more detailed explanation about that? Yeah, kindly go ahead.
Yes, so thank you, Sharif, for your question. So to avoid any, legislative or having like a law or a decree forming the NDC committee, what we have done when we ratified the Paris Agreement under a law, right? When you ratify an agreement, it should be under a law. We directly went to the Council of Ministers and we requested the Ministry of Environment to be the focal. So we requested the formation of an NDC committee and the Ministry of Environment to be chairing this this NDC committee to follow up the implementation of the NDC as per the law. So you have a law that like the chapeau of this NDC committee. And we also requested, so under this Council of Ministers decision, we also requested the authority to communicate with other ministries and identify focal points. And what we've done, so the ministers sent individual letters to each ministry saying that under Law 115, we are doing an NDC committee. This is the role of the NDC committee. We would like you to officially nominate a person. So this was done on if you want, on a horizontal level. Once we have collected all the letters, and why I'm telling you all these details, Sharif, because this is an indirect way to avoid big legislation, and it has to go to Parliament and go to Council of Ministers. So we did it the other way around. We collected the names of all the people that are nominated officially by their own ministers, right? So we had the list. Then we attached all these letters to the list, send it back to the Council of Ministers saying, you know what? The NDC committee, these are the members of the NDC committee. These are the terms of reference of each of the members. Please approve. And they approved in a meeting, in a Council of Ministers meeting. So now the NDC committee is a committee formed not by law, but by a Council of Ministers decision, which might be contested, by the way, yeah? But until today, it's not, and it's working this way. It's easy to modify. It's easier to amend. Plus, it has a legal chapeau to call for these meetings. So every time we call for an NDC committee meeting, we refer the law, we refer the Council of Ministers decision, and we invite for a meeting. And usually what's good also about this is that the same NDC committee members are part of the task forces. So when we have an NDC committee meeting, they don't come, from another planet. They have already been involved in the process, so the discussion becomes easier. Now, the next step that we're trying to do, and you can do it directly from the beginning, is to, under this NDC committee, to have two working groups, have one mitigation working group and one adaptation working group, so that also you frame things better. The task forces, we still did not officialize how the task forces will work with the NDC committee, if you remember the graph that I have put. And this is something that we plan to do under CBIT 2. Okay, so to have like a very official text that says that task forces report technically and provide technical guidance to the NDC committee to make their decision or do the NDC, approve the NDC or the implementation plan. I hope it helped.
Yeah, thank you so much. Indeed, I think it helped, but I can see the hand up again. Do you need more clarification? Kindly feel free.
Yes. Thank you. So, if I understood well, only I mean the ministries are members of this committee. I mean the development partners, private sector are not members, if I understood well.
No. Yes, but this is why we did the task forces. So the idea is the government did not want any of the non-governmental people be in a decision-making process, right? Which is completely understood. So the NDC committee member, you have representatives of ministries, I mean, finance, industry, agriculture, water, energy, environment. We also have syndicates. Do we have syndicates, Leah? I don't remember. We have the central bank, Ministry of Finance, I said. So the idea is they are only government employees in a position of decision making. The task forces now will be like the observers, right? The technical arm of this NGC committee, which will provide their technical expertise and insight in terms of advice. So, and the NGC committee is free, we're sovereign, it's free either to take the advice into consideration or to proceed with the decision that they want to make as it's aligned with the strategic vision. But I don't think you can put implementing entities and UNDP or private banks or private industries in an NGC committee. I don't think it will fly by.
Okay, thank you so much, Leah, for that elaborate explanation about how you are organizing your institutions for NDC tracking. I think it's a very good benchmarking for other countries, but also putting in mind that when it comes to institutional arrangement, it's not a one fit all. So countries also need to consider how they are organized, but most importantly, as we transit to now enhanced transparency, you realize that apart from even the mandatory chapters, most of the other sections also require, according to the MPGs, that countries provide some of the institutional arrangements on, for instance, support needed. So it's very important now to really start prioritizing in our capacity building, strengthening institutional arrangement, not only for GHG inventory, but also for the other elements that are required in the enhanced transparency reporting. So I would like at this moment to invite Uganda to share their experience on how they were able to transit from CBIT 1 to CBIT 2, but most importantly, to maybe give us more depth in terms of the project development and how it went. You saw what Leah was asking about the approach, waiting for the terminal evaluation, what necessary information did they have to prepare before that, but also what I heard from Jeff saying that they really reviewed the proposal and they realized it was worth funding. What are those key elements that strengthened the CBIT to be worthwhile funding in that short time? But maybe before you come in, I see Khartoum's hand up. I will give her a chance to say something.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sheila. I just want to share one of the, I can say, the best experiences in terms of institutional arrangements. It's the one of Egypt. Egypt, what they did actually, it's not just to like nominate a focal point from each ministry, but to create a kind of climate unit. So each ministry has a climate unit, which means like with several people working on climate issues. So this could be a very good point to like maybe to add in your CBIT too, if you want. Thank you very much. That's all.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that insight for consideration. So at this moment, I will invite Uganda to make their presentation. Thank you. Ferry, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Yes, okay. So we are waiting for you.
I hope you can see my slide.
Yes, we can see your slide. Yeah.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, and thank you for making it to this engagement. And also thank you for honoring us with the invite to share our experience implementing CBIT 1 and our transition into CBIT 2. CBIT 1 and CBIT 2 are being implemented with Conservation International as our implementing agency, and the Ministry of Water and Environment, Climate Change Department as the executing agency in partnership with the Africa Innovations Institute. So CBIT2 is about strengthening the capacity of institutions in Uganda to comply with the transparency requirements of the Paris Agreement. And yes, of course, it's in Uganda. Like I've already mentioned, the implementing agency and executing agency. It's a 48-month project of about $1.5 and it's under the climate change GEF focal area. So the way we've arranged this presentation, I will talk and my colleagues will also talk, but I would like to invite Miv to share lessons from the implementing agency. Miv, you're welcome, please.
Thank you, Feli. Yeah, Lorraine will take us through the session.
Thank you, Miv. Thank you, Feli, and thank you, everyone. My name is Lorraine Cheruiyot, and I'm with the Climate Conservation International GEF Agency, based in Nairobi. And my role basically involves project management and technical oversight support to GEF-funded projects within the CIGF agency across Africa. And CBIT 1 and now 2 are within our remit. So we wanted to share our lessons from the agency point of view, spanning across the process of instigating discussions about exploring CBIT 2 throughout the steps that we took that we think are very useful for other agencies to employ. And the first step that we have made a habit for our projects, not only CBIT projects, but across all our projects, is when a project is coming to an end, we plan together with the project management unit to develop a document, just a simple document, 10 pages max, summarizing some of the lessons learned, knowledge management, products developed, recommendations, etc. Also showing the results that have been achieved per component towards the achievement of an outcome. And this document is developed in the last quarter. Before terminal evaluation begins is when the project management unit begins this process. It might be different for different projects based on your arrangement and also based on knowing that implementation activities end at some point, and some of the project management unit teams would extend throughout to support the terminal evaluation process, and maybe sometimes that is not at some point, and some of the project management unit teams would extend throughout. Sorry, Leah. I can get an echo from your side. Thank you. Okay. So this document is very important because it highlights some of the gaps, opportunities for a follow-up project. And the document has been very instrumental, especially in designing a second phase of a project. For example, in the case of Uganda, the CBIT 1 knowledge management and the results document was really useful for the consultants who were supporting the executing agency, the Ministry of Water and Environment, to develop or to come up with a results framework and also just designing the phase 2 of the project in its entirety. So the second step that we do is, as you may know, is for the projects that are the mid-sized projects between 2 million to 10 million US dollars budget, there is an opportunity to do either a two-step mid-sized project approach or a one-step MSP, we call it MSP. And the two-step approach involves developing a concept, the project identification form, which is done in consultation with stakeholders and submitted to the GEF, that is approved, and then the PPG phase, which is the design of the proposal, then begins. But in our case, we utilize the one-step MSP approach, and this allowed us to expedite processes because we saved time, especially with developing a PIF and getting that approved by the GEF. And one important step to note or point to note is we were in consultation with the GEF to get their approval or just running the budget that was proposed with them to see whether they were aligned with that and also getting approvals from their side before proceeding to develop or to use the one-step MSP approach. And so some of the initial steps that we employed included having conversations with the government, the beneficiaries, to pursue, to get their feel and maybe the urge to pursue a second phase of the project. And in the case for Uganda, they were very much aligned and they wanted to have the continuity between phase 1 and phase 2. And as you are aware, CBIT projects are mainly on capacity building. So it's important to get the momentum moving after the end of one phase to another phase. So simultaneously, we notified the GEF about the intention to apply for a one-step MSP. And then we got their confirmation whether the proposed budget was acceptable and also just the general approach of a one-step MSP was acceptable. So during this period as well, and as you may know, the letter of endorsement is one key document that is required in order to access funding from the GEF. And so we also instigated the process of securing a letter of endorsement from the government. And one key loop that we had, or maybe a step back here, was ensuring that the letter is signed by the OFP, the operational focal point, in the correct template. We went through a number of sessions whereby we realized that maybe the template that was used was for previous GEF cycles. And for the case of Lebanon, now that you're looking to explore a CBIT2, may fall within the GEF 8 cycle or GEF 9 cycle. So just ensure that you're using the correct template of the letter of endorsement, as it saves some time in terms of exploring a second phase. The other approach that we make things maybe faster for us as the agency is we populate the letter beforehand, and then we prepare the letter first, and then we share it with the OFP for review and approval. So that helps in terms of maybe providing the correct information and also maybe just holding a session with the OFP to brief them up with some of how the letter is and what the requirement is from their side and getting that signed. So another very big step that I think also William mentioned is ensuring that there's a clear connection between the first and second phase of CBIT project. For the case of Uganda, we were really intentional to ensure that the results and maybe the gaps that were identified in CBIT1 were built upon in the second phase. And so this illustrates how the subsequent projects build on the results and outcome of the previous project, and this strengthens your case to pursue for a second phase of the project. And then knowing that a one-step MSP gives you leeway or wiggle room in terms of the timeline, it's not as stringent as in the two-step. it's important to stick within the timeline, as the PPG phase typically lies between 6 to 12 months. So just ensure you are working with this timeline and managing expectations from the government to ensure that you are all aligned with regards of the timelines and also the expectations in designing a second phase. And then lastly, and this echoes what William said, is for one to pursue a second phase of a CBIT project, the terminal evaluation report must have been submitted to the GEF beforehand. And I think this feeds into what Leah's question was about in terms of maybe what we did to prepare for that is we ensured that we had this in mind and worked with the consultants doing the terminal evaluation to develop the report, and then ensuring that we have submitted it in good time in the portal. So coming up with a clear roadmap and timeline on how, when you'd ideally want to finish the terminal evaluation, upload the report, and maybe behind the scenes preparing the knowledge management results document, maybe identifying, maybe coming up with a TOR for the design of the project, having simultaneous consultations with the beneficiaries or the government counterparts really was useful. And then lastly for us is we like to cross-share. And so given that you are looking towards the second phase where now Uganda has already started implementing, these are possibility to explore a knowledge exchange, a comms exchange of sorts. This could be in person or virtual. We will leave it to Uganda and yourselves if you think this is useful. Yes, I think I'll stop there and I'll take questions later on, and feel free to also drop some of the questions you may have in the chat and I'll respond directly to you. So back to you, Feli, for the rest of the project slides.
Thank you very much. Let's proceed. So we invite Liz to kindly take us through the roadmap.
Thank you, Doctor. So I'll be taking us through the roadmap to CBIT Phase II. So we developed a concept note towards the end of the project, and we did this with the different sector working groups and the Ministry of Water and Environment. So after developing this, we were able to then share with Conservation International, and we improved it into a project idea note, and which sparked conversation between Conservation International and the ministry. And thus forth, what Lorraine mentioned, the OFP endorsed the project, and the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Water reached out to CI and showed interest in having the second phase. So the approach that was mentioned, which was the one-step PPG-MSP, was taken on. So we managed to skip the PIF stage and then went directly to development of the product. And during the development of the product, the consultant, with our support, was able to carry out stakeholder engagements to inform better the project design. And also we found that this creates ownership when you co-develop and co-design the project with the different actors in the space. And so the project was then approved, and the implementation as well as the inception meeting commenced on the 1st of November last year. What are the lessons learned and good practices that we carry from implementation of CBIT1?
Hi, Liz.
So, yes,
I think
please.
we're still in the previous slide. Kindly check your slides. We are still at the CI slide on our end.
Oh, sorry. Dr. Feli, can I?
Is it only CI or other people are also?
We are now, okay.
For us, we can see lessons learned and good practice.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
So should we proceed?
Yes.
All right, please.
Yes.
And proceed, please.
Thank you. So we looked at stakeholder engagement during the planning and implementation. This facilitated a smooth running of the project execution, and also designing the calendar of events with the different actors, because we have about 6 sectors we are dealing with in Uganda. And so having them on board to design, especially the engagements that we had planned, made it very easy for us to then implement the work that we had planned to do. High-level engagement is key for buy-in and sustainability of project outputs, and this we experienced when we were doing the institutional arrangements, because the first phase was basically looking at enhancing institutional arrangements, where we had the sector working groups identified, and also gender representation in these working groups, as well as having MOUs and cooperation agreements with the different sectors to share information with the lead ministry, which is the Ministry of Water and Environment, that is mandated to report on activities of transparency at the national level. And so engaging the policymakers and decision makers in the different sectors enabled us to have these MOUs signed well in time of the project period, to be able to commit to submitting information, and also having tailored officers to support the ministries in terms of reporting and sharing the information from the sector to the lead agency. Stakeholder mapping, where we looked at co-actors and identified synergies. There were quite a number of actors at the time. UNDP was also implementing work on MRV systems. So we would then have, and also GIZ was doing work in the agriculture sector. So we managed to have all the different actors on board, and then we teased out the activities that we were all going to contribute to. And this made it very easy to avoid duplication of our efforts. Local CSOs, academia and private sector, we realize they have information, but they don't contribute to the national greenhouse gas inventory. And so they need some special focus and also capacity building in order to share this information with their aligned ministries, so that it can be also incorporated at the national level. We realized in some of the sectors that there were few women that were engaged in the greenhouse gas inventory and MRV systems, and so it was upon us to encourage the different sector working groups to engage more of their colleagues to be interested in this work. Frequent communication with the stakeholders for effective project implementation. Yes, effective communication was very important, but also having multiple techniques of knowledge and information sharing. We realized when you would share the reports, sometimes some of the different actors were not able to read through the entire report. So we managed to now do briefs, information notes, and we got a lot more feedback when we did that than us sharing the reports. Next. So what were the main gaps that informed CBIT2 project? So there were major gaps that limited the fulfillment of the TAC principles, which were transparency, accuracy, completeness, compatibility, and this we found in the data as we're trying to come up with the sector GHG inventories. Some of the sectors didn't actually have sufficient data to use. And so it limited the different sector inventories that were developed at the time. A lot of activity data is unreported because it's not readily available, especially the data from the private sector. academia, and CSOs, we found that they had a lot of information, but were not capturing it at national level. And so this would help bridge the gaps that are in the data that is reported at national level. So for our second component, which was on capacity building, we looked at tools that were used to collect data, the different sectors. And so these tools some of them were revised and some of them were adapted, but we realized still there was a gap, especially in the standardization of these tools, because some of the information would be picked by two sectors. I'll give an example. Transport and energy would have different information for fuel, and it stemmed from the different tools that we're using. So this is one of the things that we picked on for the second phase, where we're looking at harmonizing some of these data collection tools to be able to collect information that can then be aggregated at national level. And then there was a lack of an established baseline to track mitigation, adaptation actions, and monitoring. And so without a baseline, you couldn't be able to see how much you have been able to achieve. And so the second phase then now looks at having a baseline established. So for the third objective, which was stemming from CBIT 1, which was looking at piloting the national greenhouse gas inventory, when we developed the different sector GHG inventories, it showed us the gap that was in the information, especially for a baseline. And so it helped us at the time to get information that then fed into the third national communications report at the national level, and which is still also being used. And we find that some of the actors picked on what we did and are now enhancing on what we were able to achieve from the first phase. Next. Yes, so for the project, after we had the stakeholder engagements at national level and at subnational level, because we were also looking at having the data sources, we're able to validate the product in September 2023, and we had the state and non-state actors present for this workshop. Thank you. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So you have finished?
Yes, Dr. Feli is taking us through.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry, I was muted. So I was talking while you're not listening. As Elizabeth concluded, in phase one, when we noticed that we hadn't over-engaged the non-state actors, as we were preparing for the phase two, we brought the non-state actors on board. That's why in that validation photo, you noticed that she mentioned that we had state and the non-state actors. So how did the CBIT phase one link to the current phase two? So like earlier on communicated, we had cooperation agreements, including memorandum of understanding, developed and validated. And then we also had a bit of starting with the same for the non-state actors. And we also built expertise in compiling and reporting on greenhouse gas data. So what we noticed that we did not have like country-specific emission factors. So when we were planning during the concept and node development, we ensured that we are bringing out what else do we want to do in addition to what we've already done. Like earlier on communicated that it's like we needed to give evidence of the like progress from phase 1 to phase 2. So we aim to operationalize those agreements and memorandum of understanding that we already established with the different state actors. And we also want to complete and operationalize MOUs with the government and the non-state actors. So we also need to do field trainings and to collect and archive data. So as in we are enhancing data to inform our national inventory. And then, so like you can see, we have also planned primary data, activity data collections. And this is where we are having given support for equipment, which will allow us to collect primary data.
We seem to be on one slide. I don't know if it's on my side or it's everyone.
No, it's the same slide. I will move when we're on the next one. Eh?
All right.
Yes. So actually, I'm talking about the third bullet, the third last bullet. When I'm talking about activity data collection, and then the tools for data collection. So we will also do emphasis on developing at least some country-specific emission factors because we have been using the default factors. So phase 2 was during the pre-launch. The project management unit was established, and then we received training from the implementing agency on technical reporting, environment and social management framework, and financial reporting, visibility. So those are some of the trainings that we were taken through as the project management prior to the launch. But even after the launch, we went through additional training, including just kind of like orienting us in the reporting during the initial stages of implementation. So I would invite Ben to kindly take us through the project objectives and next.
Yes, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes, so I'll talk briefly about the foundational elements of the component 2 of the CBIT project in Uganda. And it has mainly 4 components, although there are mainly 3 technical ones. The fourth one is basically monitoring and evaluation. The first component is about building the capacity of institutions. We shall be talking here mainly about the policies, the regulations, and the infrastructure necessary. And then in the second one, we shall be talking about the capacity of the individuals, state and non-state actors. And then in the third one, we shall be talking about learning and knowledge sharing. And then in the fourth one, we shall be discussing more about monitoring and evaluation. Next slide. Please move to the next slide.
I'm on the next slide.
I still see the second slide, but if you guys can see it, I can use the one I have here. Okay. So the first, like I said, the first component of the 4 is going to be dealing with strengthening state and non-state institutions to coordinate and manage GHG inventories. Some of the activities that will be done under here will include some of the outputs, for example, would be functionalizing the GIG hubs, putting them in place, and then determining what they will do. And then also we shall, like Feli had mentioned, buy equipment, a gas chromatograph, that we shall use to collect in some emission factor data. And then we shall also facilitate the capacity of the individuals to share this information in terms of operationalizing some of the agreements that were signed in the beginning, but also the staff at CCD and other sectors will also be facilitated to participate, for example, in the transparency initiatives like the COPs. And then also operationalize the MRV system. And the second component should be focusing mainly on the individual's capacity, for example, on how to collect activity data, on how to collect emission factor data, and then developing protocols and tools and methods for doing this. Am I still heard?
Yes.
Do you still hear me? Okay. And so the other thing is also that the national and subnational stakeholders will be able, will be trained on how to operate and maintain this equipment so that they're able to collect and analyze this data. In the third component, we shall be basically coordinating, strengthening coordination among CBIT in Uganda and then other initiatives. And perhaps one of the activities that we're doing today is part of this. So, for example, the other thing that also will be done is that we shall facilitate the focal points in the different sectors to participate in functions and that are associated with the transparency report and reporting mechanisms. And then the learning visits also, maybe we may have teams from one country visiting other countries, visiting COP and other things like those. And then knowledge management and generation and sharing will also be at the center of this. So the fourth component will focus mainly on monitoring and evaluation of project activities. So we're talking about project reports and quarterly reviews and then terminal evaluation. So that is what I think we shall be talking about in brief. Okay, the next slide, Liz. I will just take you through. Are you able to move to the next slide?
We're on the next slide, and yeah, maybe Liz could take us through the safeguards.
Yes.
Liz has asked me to highlight. Okay, Liz, go ahead if you're there.
Yes, thank you. So on the safeguards, we have accountability and grievance mechanism. And this was developed and shared with all our stakeholders. And we make it a point to share it at every engagement so that we get feedback from our stakeholders. We have the stakeholder engagement plan where we have the state and non-state actors, and we are tracking this as well to see the different actors that we are engaging with during the process of implementation. And then gender mainstreaming plan. The previous phase, we were looking at 30% of women engagement, but this phase, we are now looking at 40% of the women engagement during project activities, data collection. So we are also tracking the gender aspects in terms of how we are engaging the different stakeholders. Over to you, Dr. Fedi.
Yes, and now we could share a bit of, like, as we conclude, what we have learned so far in this phase. Like earlier on communicated, engagement with high-level decision makers is very important for smooth operations. And so we are working with the top leadership in the different government sectors, but also we are applying the same approach with the non-state institutions that we're working with. And then what we've also learned that if we are planning to have phase 2, it's important to keep engagement, to keep in touch with the different institutions and different individuals that you've worked with, because there's some time between the end of phase 1 and then the project development before phase 2. You don't want a disconnect. So we also noticed, like during implementation of phase 1, that there are some stakeholders that we wanted on board for phase 2. So identifying these ones is key. But even after we are already implementing phase 2, we realize that we need to engage specifically with the respective sector institutions, and then kind of probe them to identify the non-state actors, the academia, the private sector, the civil society that they are working with, so that at the end of it all, we're able to know a comprehensive structure of the stakeholders to work with. So from the very beginning of planning this phase 2, we have been working with the stakeholders, the ones we have worked with before, but also some of the ones we are planning to work with, so that we can think together as in co-design what do we exactly want to do for Uganda from phase 1 to phase 2. And then after planning together and designing together, also we are currently implementing together, and we hope we shall continue implementing together so that we are able to meet our respective targets. So one thing we've noticed also, that it's important for us to be, as project implementers, to take note of some changes or some progress that have happened after phase 1. Because when we were exiting, we had recommendations that we submitted to government. And good thing is some of these were taken up. And so when we came to phase 2, we also had to do a bit of like background engagement to see what changes have happened. Because even like Elizabeth communicated earlier, some development partners picked interest starting from where we had stopped. So we wanted to synergize and ensure that we capture some of the progress post phase 1. So we are keeping in touch and communicating every stage, every progress of the project. And this especially, we want the different stakeholders to feel part of the project at every level, not to feel like it's a project management project, but they own the project, and so support becomes easier. So in our information sharing, like we've already communicated, we use multiple techniques of knowledge and information sharing. And now, unlike phase 1, we are also using a lot of the website and social media, because we are trying to also move with the trends, because I think a lot of information is got through social media and also through reading online compared to reading from hard copies. So those are some of the things we are trying to, we have so far learned since November to date. So thank you so much. And yes, CBIT Uganda, just like CBIT 1, the 2 projects are funded by the JEF, and our implementing agency is Conservation International. Thank you for listening. I think we're now open for questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Team CBIT2 Uganda. It was really, really very, very too detailed, and I think we learned a lot. I will not just speak my insights, but I will want to open the floor to Lebanon and other countries that are here to ask maybe questions, maybe if they need more clarification on some of the areas, especially how you managed to pick those areas that were going to feed into the enhanced transparency, but also feed into the work of CBIT1. So I will hand over the floor now. I do not see any questions in the chat. So I will hand over the floor to you participants. Yeah. Yes, Leah. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. That was actually very, very beneficial. From your top, from the top of your head, if you have this information, how much are you putting weight on generating technical studies versus doing capacity building events? Because from where we stand, I feel that there's a big need to improve data, the quality of data, not the availability of data, as I was mentioning, in terms of indicators, improving tier 2 data, emission factors, and less budget-wise, and less on actually doing capacity building, session exchange missions, and all of this. This is the first question for Uganda, and maybe our colleague from Jeff. So, William, if you have an input on this. Second, in your exchange and knowledge, you mentioned exchange trips to other countries, but also participation in COP. And I would like to hear William's input on this, because sometimes we get very concrete feedback that budget cannot be used for participation in COP. So if there are capacity building sessions in COP where we want some of our stakeholders to go, or project team, can this be included in CBIT 2? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Leah. First, going for the first question, how much are we doing in improving data? In our phase 1, our training was hands-on training. So during the hands-on training, we actually collected data in the different sectors for the different sector inventories, and this has been used in our national reporting. So it wasn't just training, like maybe we are just using examples. We are doing real data collection. So it was during that process that we were able to see the gaps. And of course, there were improvement plans proposed. So coming to phase 2, one of the things that we mentioned that we weren't doing, because in our reporting, we are doing our emission calculations based on default factors. Now we aim at least having some country-specific emission factors, meaning we are going to have our training, including studies that will inform the emission factors, the country-specific emission factors. So we also mentioned that we are having field activity data collections across the different sectors. So here, most of the data we relied on in phase 1 was based on what was already archived in the respective sectors. But now here, in addition to what is already archived, we also want to go to the field and collect. And one of the equipments mentioned by Ben that we have is a gas chromatograph, which will help us now to actually measure gases which are collected from the field. So I think with these planned activities, we hope to have enhanced data. But other than this, remember, we also had a shortfall of data from the non-state actors, because our focus for phase 1 was mainly getting as much data as we could get from the readily available sources, and these were government institutions. But we are onboarding private sector, we are onboarding civil society and academia, because we also noticed from phase 1 that they have data, but they don't know how to share it, or maybe they are not very comfortable to share. So as part of our capacity building, we aim to support sensitization and capacity for data sharing. So about participation in COP, in our phase 1, we supported some individuals from different sectors to go to COP. And it's quite exciting that some of our beneficiaries are now national negotiators. And some of our beneficiaries have been even supported direct by other development partners, even after CBIT 1 was had ended. So we feel like there was capacity in exposing people to such conferences. So in this phase, we've also supported plan to support this. I hope I've shared some light.
Yes, thank you so much. So I can see we have just a few minutes to end the meeting. I don't know if the teams will just shut us down. But I heard Leah saying that maybe you would need also William's view about utilization of resources for some of the peer learnings and facilitation for COPE. So I would also want to hear from William about that question. I think she had mentioned that.
I'm sorry, colleagues, I lost a connection for a minute. Could you please repeat the inquiry?
So Leah would want to understand from some of the recommendations from the Ugandan project and also from CIJF, they were saying that the other way of how Lebanon can learn and prepare a very good project for phase 2 is through peer learning and also participation in other activities like COPE. And Leah was wondering if it's allowable in terms of utilizing resources for some of those activities.
That's a very good question. And actually, there's no a direct guideline on whether it is appropriate or possible or not to include the activity within the project budget. But it will need to be very much well justified and aligned with Article 13 of the Paris Agreement. The participation on, I would say, instances or workshops or international conferences, and how it could directly benefit the country and the project as it aligns to Article 13. That's the thing with particularly the CBIT project, is that we are constrained to Article 13 and meeting the guidelines of the Enhanced Transparency Framework. And usually at COPs, what we see is like it could be a very long event in which one of the agenda items will be transparency, but along coupled with so many others negotiation items for discussion. So it's as long as we can very much draft or build a case around how it aligns with Article 13, it could be considered. I won't say that it will be approved, but it will be at least considered and studied in more detail. Considering that what I just mentioned is like COPs usually encompasses a greater variety of topics that could be covered, and that those will not be able to be funded by the CBIT.
Yeah, thank you so much for that feedback. Maybe at this moment, we just have 1 minute. I will allow you to continue in the chat maybe, but also I will ask my colleague Keltum to run the Menti. I hope the meeting will still allow us to continue.
Yes, okay. Just a moment. I will share my screen. So this is the Menti, just for your feedback. If, I guess you can connect using the QR code. It's the easy way. So please scan the QR code, or you can join by going to menti.com, and then you enter the code 88009244.
Thank you, Kulthum. There are any other things, because we have to run into another meeting. I'll fill now the Menti.
Okay.
Are there any planned sessions still?
Other planned sessions?
I mean, for today.
No. No. This is the final one. This is just for your feedback, so it's okay. If so, you don't have any other questions, Leah. That was good for you.
Thank you, Uganda team, and thank you all the attendees. That was very inspiring. So now I have a lot of ideas and light bulbs moments to put and ideas to put in the proposal. In case we have any additional questions, we'll make sure to connect with our colleagues from Uganda. And I'll send to Sharif the more details on NDC committee. Okay, so the terms of reference and the composition of the team and all of this. Okay?
Okay. Thank you very much, Leah, for attending. Thank you, Leah and Leah too. Thank you for Uganda
so
team.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. So please, for other countries or other participants who are still with us, we will need to ask you the first question. Please state your country. Lebanon, yes, of course. Morocco, Turkey, nice. We have with us also Mauritania, Tunisia, we have Sudan, Uganda, of course, Uganda, yeah, and some other countries from the Anglophone network. Please, for people who couldn't join us, you can just put menti.com and use the code 88009244. Okay. So the first question was, this event useful for your work? Four answers. Okay. I think we are losing people, or they have some difficulties in connecting. And here you still have the QR code if you want to join us.
I have put the code in the chat and the link.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the third question, what was the most useful that you will take away from this webinar? Draft process, CBIT preparation phase, yes. Terminal reports, draft process, CBIT supports and continuous, and draft 9 opening soon, yes. That's right. Okay. So thank you very much, guys. I think we will need to send you the Menti. So if, for example, for people who couldn't fill the the mentee to do it later. I think this could be done, Sheila, right? We can share it.
Yes, we can share the Mint link and also the recording for this session.
Okay. Okay, so thank you very much, guys. And it was very fruitful discussion and informative. I guess we're almost done. We have 5 minutes. And I would like to ask William, Billy, if you have any other words to say, if you would like to close the meeting. Okay, I think also Billy has some issues with connection. Okay, guys, so thank you very much for attending and see you very soon in our webinar series for both networks. Eva, it was a very good intervention. And thank you very much, Sheila, for accepting, sharing, and cooperating every time with us. And best of luck for everybody. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Nice day.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice day. I hope you will share the presentation.
Thank you.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
we shall share the presentations and also upload all this
Can you
information on
agree
our
to
platform.
your list, because I only attended on the behalf of So Muhammadu from Mauritania. I'm not on your list.
Okay.
I don't know whether
Okay,
it's
we will.
Keltum has
Yeah.
taken notes, but we
Yeah,
shall
please.
upload all this information on the platform.
Yeah, please just mention your email in the chat now before leaving.
okay. I'll do it.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. Bye.
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 Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.